Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to any of our international colleagues joining us. We're going to take one more minute to give folks a chance to enter the room, and we'll get started here in just a moment. We greatly appreciate you being here with us today to hear more about the story of IU Bloomington and how they are fostering belonging for their first-year students. We have a great group of institutional partners here joining us, as well as folks from across the United States who are not yet Mentor Collective partners. We really hope that you take advantage of learning from what other institutions are doing. And with that, we will go ahead and get today's conversation started. Really looking forward to hearing more about what IU Bloomington is doing with their student population to foster that sense of belonging. To get started, my name is Eric Schuler, and I am a Partnership Development Director at Mentor Collective, which means that I have the privilege of working with our incredible leaders who are at the forefront of innovation and driving student success across higher education. I've had the joy of working with IU Bloomington for a number of years. And with that in mind, let's turn it over to the folks that you all came here today to learn from and give our speakers, David Johnson and Sarah Booher, a chance to introduce themselves. David?
Hi, good afternoon. Great to see you, Eric, and great to be in conversation. I'm David Johnson. I'm the Vice Provost for Enrollment Management at Indiana University Bloomington, and I have been at IU for 17 years and 14 years in this position, and just delighted to be here and to be here with my colleague, Sarah Booher. Sarah?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. As David said, I'm Sarah Booher. I'm an Assistant Vice Provost of Enrollment Management and Executive Director of Retention. I've been at IU for 24 years. About 15 of those have been in enrollment management, but my current role is relatively new. So I'm coming up at about 2 years in this current role, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the near future.
Our discussion today will center around how peer connections and specifically formalized and scalable peer mentorship and how that is a key contributor to students' sense of belonging and resource utilization in higher education. We'll discuss the research topics that will build these connections and how our speakers have been implementing Mentor Collective's peer mentorship partnership in order to really leverage and impact their student populations. We'll learn what they've been doing to accomplish this and how they have leveraged both the data and from both quantitative and qualitative standpoints over the past few years to show that impact on their institution. And of course, it will be time at the end for you all to engage with both David and Sarah. If you do have any questions throughout today's conversation, please drop them in the chat and we'll respond to them in real time or table them for the end of today's time together. So to get started, I do want to start with a little bit of a poll. What are your top barriers to driving student success at your institution? You can choose more than one answer. So if you have an opportunity, my colleague Alexandra should be launching this poll. Please let us know what are the barriers that you are facing right now at your respective institutions. We'll let those results populate. We know that student success is multifaceted, but being able to hear from you about your individual unique institution and those challenges will also help us to ensure that we are delivering content today that is relevant to your individual campus. All right. So we have a number of responses already. And so it looks like, quite frankly, a lot of these topics are challenges, but right now, lack of student belonging and engagement is the top respondent, as well as underutilization of student support services. But quite frankly, all these areas look to be areas of improvement within those who are attending. So we know that's a challenging time to be a student and to also lead and be at a college or university. There are many successes to come in the future of higher education, but we know that has also been difficult in the past decade or so. Student engagement and involvement on campus is decreasing. Student need is growing, but also there is a lack of awareness of resources or how to take advantage of said resources. The challenges that students face heighten these pressures that they have around the stress and their overall well-being. And of course, we know that administrators are also burning out because of the high student need that students are facing right now as well. We've chosen to highlight these statistics because we've seen firsthand how meaningful peer connections affect them, and how the right assessment tools can provide more visibility into the barriers that your student face. When we look at a recent study out of Titan Partners was looking at some information around student belonging and plotting that along the spectrum of how also students are taking advantage of support services. And so students who don't feel like they belong are also not taking advantage of those services. And so we know that their peers can really play an important role. Number one, first in that belonging at their institution, but number two, in their ability to succeed and take advantage of resources on campus. Much of what we know of students tends to get categorized into either academic or non-academic areas. As the owners in the student success space, you all have the difficult job of deciphering what that means for each student and then anticipate and or react to any of those needs. One area of need that influences quite a bit in regard to student motivation and performance is a sense of belonging. Academics who study a sense of belonging know that when it's present, students are engaged, and their motivation to continue to graduation is certainly enhanced. The absence of a sense of belonging, therefore, has been shown to have a profound negative effect on not just a motivation, academic achievement, but also in the way that students face their adversities on campus and how they see themselves receiving support on campus as well. And as we dig deeper into that Titan Partners study, there are gaps both in the student awareness and utilization of campus resources, and being able to close that gap of that student awareness, but also lifting up and utilizing those support services is critically important. Finally, we know at Mentor Collective that peers are a great way to unlock belonging, both before they arrive on campus, but as they set foot on campus, because we know that students will talk to their peers oftentimes before they will talk to their advisors or faculty members, because that messenger matters. And we do the same thing as professionals. We often will talk to a peer or a colleague sometimes before we go and speak to our supervisors. So with that foundation set in mind, I'm going to start bringing in our colleagues at Indiana University Bloomington to really have them tell their story of how they are fostering belonging for the rest of today's conversation. Before we get there, I want to do a quick overview of IU Bloomington. It is a large state institution with a fantastic track record of student success, 91% first-year retention rate, 70% four-year graduation rate, and an 81% six-year graduation rate, with the #1 school of informatics in the nation. And I'm sure David and Sarah could go on and on about some of the great pieces of IU as well, given their long tenures there. But I do want to pivot and now ask both David and Sarah, how are you building a student success strategy that is driving belonging for your first-year student populations, and how are you thinking of belonging in that context, and to what extent is belonging your focus in that first-year student population?
Thanks, Eric. I'll first just say I'm just glad to be here with so many colleagues, and I was thinking about my own research and experience in this space, and I'll just quickly say that a number of years ago, too many to probably mention, when I was working on my doctoral degree, I did the research around student retention, and student retention was really the main focus then, retention and graduation. Student success language wasn't probably part of the culture then as it is now in terms of those terms. But Vince Tinto talked about academic and social integration. And Eric, on one of your slides, you were talking about the research around supporting students academically and socially. And really that is this sense of belonging. And I'm a part of this institution academically, socially. And so I want to talk about how we've been thinking about it at IU. We have been focused on really helping support students thread belonging through their experience. And I'll give a few examples. In admissions, we really are focused on students and advocating for students to bring their whole selves to IU. So bring who they are, and so others can learn from them, and they can learn from others in this dynamic and really global learning space. And so bringing your whole self is really critical. And then through new student orientation, we focus on IU as being home. This is your home. And so you belong here. And that theme is thread through the first year experience as well. And then mentoring is just one of the pieces to support belonging. You'll hear me say several times today, having a number of tools in your toolbox are really important in terms of focusing on student success and really trying to support students in belonging. Mentoring, we have found, and we're going to share data that shows this, has really been very helpful in that regard. And so we have this focus of threading it through. And then our final point right now is that post-COVID, and as we all know, this is even more critical. And students are coming out of different and diverse learning environments. And so we want them to feel as if our institution is the place for them, and mentoring plays a strong part. And we'll talk about how we're teeing that up to play an even stronger part. Sarah?
Great,
Yeah,
thanks, David.
So Sarah, I know that you've been at IU for a long time, but you're also newer to this role in the office and with overseeing retention. So you're looking at this from a little different lens than just from what David is. And so how are you thinking about building an enrollment strategy that impacts retention within your role specifically?
Sure, and thanks again for having us. I know a lot of folks are interested in my role. I've had a lot of people reach out and say, tell me about your position and what it is that you do. So I'll just speak a little bit to that. So about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, David was looking at the structure of enrollment management and where some gaps or needs were at the same time that our university strategic plan was being set up and rolled out, which has the majority focus on student success and retention. And what he realized, and one of the things that David has always said as long as I've known him, is that retention is everyone's job and no one's job. Right? So every single thing that a student experiences or doesn't experience on a college campus impacts their persistence. And so it's on all of us to make sure that we are providing the support and the sense of belonging and the tools and everything needed for students to continue on their path toward graduation. But enrollment management at the time was more of it's everyone's job. And David really had the vision for having someone who woke up in the morning thinking about things through a retention lens. And so that is part of my role as AVP. I have other units that are part of my responsibility, the Office of Scholarships, which is where Mentor Collective to this point has been involved, and we'll talk more about that, fundraising and development for enrollment management, and then this retention lens. And so it's not a matter of having a big retention office that then does a bunch of retention strategies. It's really more of doing an analysis within enrollment management. How are our OEM partners working to utilize every opportunity as an opportunity for student success and getting students more engaged? And also with our outside of OEM campus partners, the Office of Student Life and undergraduate education and our academic schools and partners, because lots of retention and student success and ways to make students feel like they belong is always happening, right? But at a school, especially one of our size, what we realize is that's happening in a lot of pockets, but there hadn't really been an overall campus view or overall assessment of looking at as a campus, where are some equity gaps? Where are things really going well? What is some data that we can point to really help move us forward in this space? So I think that we're really looking at, so many people think of enrollment management and think of the front end and think of admissions and recruiting students to a university. And that's obviously a critical part of it. But I know many of you are also in enrollment management, and we are squarely in this student success and retention space in helping establish that student sense of belonging from the very beginning of their journey. And so that's a lot of what I'm focusing on, is how internally are we doing our best work with that? And then how can we do a better job partnering with others on campus to collectively help move the ball forward here?
Thanks, Sarah.
So just a few quick slides to kind of visualize this a little bit more and help all the listeners and viewers get a sense of what we're talking about. So at IU and for IU Bloomington, we are focused on a strategic plan. IU 2030 is the university's strategic plan, and IU Bloomington as one of our campuses, as the flagship campus, has the 2030 plan that we're working on for our campus. And there are these three themes. Equipping graduates for resounding success is all about student success, putting students first and really focusing on students, the whole thread, as I mentioned, which I'll give another example in a moment of that. Then the second area is around discovery and research and improving communities and changing lives. And that's super critical as a research institution or any institution through higher education. Discovery and research is front and center for us. And the third area is then our impact on the state and the nation and the world. And that's three different areas that we're focusing on in our strategic planning. But for our conversation today and for the work that we're focused on is all about student success, the first bullet. And I already kind of talked about this, about in admissions, inviting students to bring their whole selves to IU, and the new student orientation, helping students to see IU as home. So you get this repeated for you here. But throughout the first year experience, students engage in 6 categories of support. And this is how we have done this. We set this up a number of years ago to support students in their engagement on campus and how they can become more connected and have belonging on campus through these different areas that will support their success here, as you can read these different areas. And then finally, as we kind of dive in, and we're just going to give you 2 quick snippets, goal 1 and goal 3. I'll cover goal 1 around our strategic planning work, which is very much connected, as you see, to mentorship, or mentorship is very much connected to our strategic planning work. And so undergraduate academic experience and career preparation. We want to provide an exceptional academic experience for all undergraduate students and uniquely prepare them for careers of the future. Of course, that is what we're working to do, and I'm sure that could be for many of you the same kind of focus. But we're really working under a comprehensive experience with a seamless transition from admissions through the end of the student's first year, into their second year, into their third, and into their fourth, engaging with high impact practices, like internships, research, and study abroad. But mentoring plays a critical role, and that's what we're focused on here today. And by offering mentoring to all incoming students, they will foster, hopefully, a sense of belonging, and it will help them ensure that they are connected and that they have success at IU. And you see there again, Tinto's academic and social development threaded in this. And so what do some of the metrics tell us? Well, 2% higher retention rate from first to second year for the students in the IU OEM scholarship recipients who engaged with the Mentor Collective than those peers who are scholarship recipients who did not engage. And so that is a significant finding. We're also going to show you some challenging data in a few minutes, some that we've had to work our way through, but this is one of our more recent outcome bullets that we wanted to share with you. And so this is why we believe mentoring is important. We've long felt that way, and we'll talk more about that, but then these outcomes are why we want to continue and expand our mentoring work, and we'll tell you more about that. Sarah?
And the third goal of the strategic plan is about inclusion, wellness, and student support. And mentoring offers opportunities to connect with these areas as well. And I need to take a moment to call out our colleague, Megan Immerziel Davis. She's in our Office of Scholarships and has just done an extraordinary job really leading and driving these efforts. And David will talk in a little bit about why we decided to start with this Hoosier Scholar population. So just a little bit more about opportunities for this wellness and student support is mentors can submit flags if they think students could benefit from additional support. There are opportunities for mentees to seek help, to be connected with resources. And I want to make a point here too that A lot of focus, of course, is the benefits on the mentees, but what Megan and we have found is that the mentors have tremendous benefits for their opportunities for leadership development and their engagement as well. And in fact, we've had years where we've had more mentors want to participate than we've had mentees for them to mentor. So there's a lot of benefit from for both the mentees and the mentors. An additional metric point here is that 6% retention rate increase for first to second year for students that were underrepresented minorities in this population. And that was very significant for us in thinking about how we might use this program differently in the future. And I will mention that our Hoosier Scholar population, where we started this program, is more than half of our beginner class. So it is more than 5,000 students. So I just wanted to share that context that, you know, a 2% or a 6% change is really significant numbers wise for us, in addition to it being a good move percentage wise.
Thanks, Sarah. So thanks for sharing about how IU is investing in mentorship as a core part of your strategic plan. But I want to really focus in on where this partnership has been within the Hoosier Scholars Initiative. And so, David, you've been a part of this since day one, working with Mentor Collective. And so why did you choose to prioritize peer mentorship with your Hoosier Scholars, and how has the initiative evolved since day one? David, you're on mute, by the way.
Thanks. Thank you, Eric. A little bit about the why, and then about how it's evolved over time. We felt that we were investing in these students, about half of our class, as Sarah said, who have received scholarships, academic scholarships, financial need scholarships. And so we felt that we needed to provide additional support for these students. We have invested in these students. And so we, in 2019, decided to partner with the Mentor Collective, and we began our first engagement. We're going to talk about engagement numbers in a few minutes, but we started in 2019, and then we expanded a bit more to various populations within the Hoosier Scholar community over time. And this is critical in terms of that it provides not just support for the students who are being mentored, but the upper division students, those sophomores and juniors and seniors who are serving as mentors, can gain critical leadership experience and follow-through experience and understanding how it is to really serve in a critical role as being a mentor to someone. And so there's a win, I believe, on both sides of this for mentors and mentees. I talk about the give and get of leadership, and these are student leaders. They're some of our best students on campus. And so what they give is important, but what they get out of it is super important too. And then finally, just to say, all of this is to try to support a sense of belonging among our students. And you can see on the next slide, there's details about our program, the Hoosier Scholar Community, where we have ambassadors, our Hoosier Scholar events. There they are walking in the homecoming parade, so really presenting the scholar community to the larger community of the university, and also mentoring and the things that we've talked about and why we chose to engage to really support students that we have already invested in significantly. And so the next slide.
Yeah, I think, David, you and I intrinsically know who the Hoosier Scholars are. For those who are in the room who don't have a definition of what comprises a Hoosier Scholar, could you give the folks attending what makes up a Hoosier Scholar?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say, what is a Hoosier? And for us, you can try to look it up, but there isn't a real true definition. But what we say at IU is it's truly a state of mind, and it is the students' experience at IU, and they are Hoosiers. We don't have an official mascot, but these are students who are part of the scholarship community, and we invite them to participate in our programs, and we invite them to interview with us to be an ambassador to help us recruit future Hoosier Scholars. So Eric, I hope that's a little bit more helpful in terms of what this community of students are.
Yes, thank you.
So this slide just talks about that growth over time and our engagement, and increased 50% since 2020. And we could spend all afternoon talking about the pandemic and the challenges of engagement. But I will just say here before I turn the next slide, I think to you, Eric, to say that we felt that we were really privileged to provide for our students mentoring during the pandemic, which a lot of that could happen electronically, digitally, by text, by the platform, and we were pleased to be able to do that. And we can see that there has been growth in mentorship participating in this program. And you're going to talk a little bit about engagement, which maybe has a little bit of a slightly different story, maybe due to COVID a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the ways in which we are able to see how these mentoring relationships are evolving and making an impact in each student's lives is that mentors are trained to log these conversations back to the platform. And so the mentors give us an idea and the institution an idea about what they're talking about with their counterpart. And so being able to see the metrics around who's connecting with whom, what are they talking about, provides the institution insights as to number one, are students engaging, but number two, being able to provide qualitative data around those conversations that they're having and what's important to students at certain times of the year, so that if there are any challenges that are arising, the institution can help unblock those challenges by either supporting the mentor or the mentee directly or intervening from a respective office. And we'll touch on that in a little bit. But we know, and David talked about those high impact practices earlier on, but mentorship is a high impact practice. And our work with the Hoosier Scholars Initiative and the program has really supported IU to streamline their existing mentoring efforts and to really deliver on the outcomes that we talked about a little bit earlier, looking to increase retention within targeted student populations or in their overall Hoosier Scholars cohort. How this works in practice is that we partner with institutions to design and align with their institutional strategies and goals, and then support them to recruit and train mentors, engage those mentees as early as when they are making their deposits and making the commitment to the institutions. But then we give mentors and mentees an opportunity to give the Hoosier Scholars Program an idea of who they are from both an identity standpoint, but a life interest standpoint, by completing a matching survey, so that that matching survey can act as a tool in which to make best fit pairings amongst the mentor and mentee counterparts. David alluded to the technology a little bit, but we know that today's generation of student probably does not want to jump on a phone call right away with somebody. And so being able to connect mentor and mentee via a text relay so they can start their communications over a very comfortable and familiar way of communicating with their peers. They're able to start that conversation without providing personal contact information. And we know that these mentors are then helping to unlock and help refer students to campus resources to help enhance that sense of belonging and to help uncover any roadblocks along the way. And all throughout the platform, as well as there's ongoing assessment and early insights that are provided through flags, so that if a mentor does uncover any of these challenges, the institution can be alerted to a mentee roadblock. And we'll cover what some of those challenges might look like here in a little bit. But really, these student needs come in a variety of different forms. And we know that these relationships need to have some sort of formation in terms of what the mentee wants to achieve. And so when the mentee is also completing that matching survey, we're asking them what they're looking to achieve with their mentor counterpart. And so we know that these goals consist of anything from finding success in class, or quite frankly, just making friends. Being able to make a friend with somebody on campus as you are that new to campus student can be an important piece to help foster that sense of belonging. So I touched a little bit of what those flags look like, but as we talked about earlier, that messenger matters. And knowing that students often will lean onto those peer relationships when they first arrive is critically important. But at the same time, what if a student doesn't have that peer relationship when they first come to campus? And so this is where the mentoring relationship really comes in, being able to, sometimes just the simplest of roadblock might be a major hurdle for a student, not being able to know where to go for a certain resource, and being able to be referred to campus centers at the appropriate time really helps to ensure that these students are, number one, taking advantage of the mentoring relationship, but then providing any early alerts about the challenges that students are facing. David, I know that in the years that you've been a part of this partnership, what have been some of the kind of illuminating roadblocks that you have seen from mentors help their mentees uncover along the way?
Yeah, I think that these examples that you have here and the work that Sarah mentioned that Megan is doing on our team helps to truly help students uncover, they don't know where to turn, and a mentor, someone, and data shows that they're willing to ask a peer, as you've indicated, and they don't know where to turn, and the mentor is often helpful in just getting them. And if the mentor doesn't know, raising the flag, so to speak, can be critical here. So these are good examples, but I will say, particularly students maybe not understanding how student health services and mental health support might be available to them, or understanding how they could get more engaged and connected on campus, particularly again, coming out of COVID, and how to become more socially active and connected. And so we see it as another great touch point. And I've also said this too, that mentors, we all have them in our lives, and many of us have multiple mentors. And so that's the beauty of this whole program, is this isn't the only mentorship that they should have. They should have faculty who are mentoring them, should have their residence hall, friends down the hall, and upperclassmen mentoring. And this is then a more directed and purposeful approach to help students. And I love the fact that we have the flags and that we are able to raise these students' concerns up a bit more.
Thanks, David. So we know that these relationships take many forms. And so really looking at what are some of the benefits that the mentors support their mentees with. Things can be as simple as how to manage their time, but helping to find connection with others, but really driving these students to existing opportunities and activities on campus so that they can really lean into what the campus is already offering and take advantage of those resources. And knowing that this is a mutually beneficial relationship, David touched on how this is a leadership development opportunity for their upper division Hoosier Scholars to be able to grow their leadership skills and give back as a part of that Hoosier Scholar community is critically important. We do a lot of the emphasis, so much of the research emphasis has been on mentee engagement and mentee retention, but we also know that that mentor experience is critically important as well, as reflected in some of these testimonials from Hoosier Scholar mentors. Being able to engage and support their fellow student, that quantitative piece is critically important, but that qualitative piece as well, being able to hear directly from the students and the ways that has benefited them is something that doesn't get lost in the mix per se, but we know is an important piece of the puzzle when it comes to these relationships. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you a little bit, and I want to talk more about the impact that you all have seen around belonging and retention in the Hoosier Scholars Initiative over the past couple of years. So could you lead us into what you have seen in your role and the impact on retention?
Absolutely. And before I jump into that data, I'm going to add one point to something that David said about the mentor-mentee relationship and the intentionality of it. One of the things that we've learned is that the most successful mentor-mentee matches are ones where we have connected students and mentors who have something in common. So whether that is their major or their hometown or the scholarship program that they're part of, that's one thing that we have learned through our experience, is that being able to match those with students that have something in common really benefits the outcomes of those matches. So that said, I'll move on to the next screen and talking about some of the data that we have seen. So the first slide here is retention from from fall to spring semester. As you will see in 2020, from the year before, we have a negative percentage, and we all know what happened in 2020. And so it's not too surprising that engagement and connection was less during that time. It kind of normalized that next year. And then in 2022, we saw a 1% increase. So again, this is from fall to spring semester. In the next slide, we show from fall to fall. So when they start as a first-year student in the fall cohort to the second-year cohort, the overall percentage increase that we saw, and again, this is looking at the whole Hoosier Scholar cohort, that is anybody that's earned a scholarship, merit-based, need-based from us, coming in overall to those who engaged with the Mentor Collective program. Like I said earlier, there's over 5,000 students that are considered Hoosier Scholars. And so a 2% increase is pretty significant numbers wise. But what really stood out to us were these next two numbers, because where we noticed the highest gains were for international students that increased 5%, and for underrepresented minority students that increased by 6%. And so one of the conversations that we've been having internally that David hinted at is, how do we want to take what we've learned? And we've now done this for a few years, so we have the opportunity for assessment and reevaluating where the biggest impact can be made. And so we're looking at the possibility of a shifted focus or broadening to our whole beginner cohort, and really looking at where we've had those greatest gains is really exciting. On the next slide is some information about sense of belonging. And as you can see, this chart starts in August of 22 and goes through May of 23. So one kind of academic year. And it makes sense, right, that a student's sense of belonging at the beginning of their first year is lower. And we want to see that it's increasing over time. And there are times in the middle where students say their sense of belonging is low. And then we have the opportunity to follow up on that and engage with those students if we know that. And so that's a benefit as well.
And then being able to act on some of that data as well. So there's the aggregate view of the sense of belonging, but in addition to that, you're able to see whenever a student submits a low sense of belonging assessment score, and then any sort of intervention or outreach that you want to take place beyond there can then take place too, so that you can reach that student in that moment when they might report that low sense of belonging as well.
Yep. And then in addition to the data, which of course is critically important for all of us with limited resources and needing to be able to justify where we spend our funds, those student testimonials are so valuable because they let us know what their on the ground experience is. So participating in this program has strengthened my ties to the school and community. One question they helped me figure out was how to manage time commitments so I could get involved in clubs. Those types of things we all know that regardless of the size of your institution, a lot of times it's those one-on-one relationships and that really make the difference to keep a student on their path. And so we are very pleased that we know that many of our students found that through their mentor.
So thank you for sharing all of that, Sarah. So we know it's important for our institutions and our partners to have a more holistic picture of students and that you're working to support, and that critical piece of the institutional retention strategy. The actions that we all take for students in their time of need help to make meaningful differences in their likelihood of persistence. And as David noted this, but I wanted to reiterate that mentorship really is a vehicle to better support students, and the assessments that are derived through partnership with Mentor Collective really help to highlight some of these critical pieces around belonging along the way. So you get notified when those students may need extra support. You gain access to a sense of belonging and academic self-efficacy surveys from individual students, but also more holistically from the entire student population, so that you have that quantitative piece about what are the successes and what are the areas of opportunity when it comes to the mentorship initiative. So David, back to you. This partnership started back in 2019. So what lies ahead as you look at fostering a culture of mentorship and encouraging to enhance a sense of belonging on campus?
Yeah, this is a great question, Eric. And I'll say, you know, when we start a program, you do a pilot and then you move into a second year, third year, and then it becomes a thing, and then it's a fourth year. So as we move forward, we're really excited about expanding our engagement with Mentor Collective and mentoring for our students. And I think the next slide kind of tees this up nicely. So I want to talk about these goals and the stakeholders really fast. But those really haven't changed, and the population is the exciting part about where we want to go. And Sarah alluded to this earlier, which I appreciated. So yes, goals of facilitating student success, increasing student engagement, empowering students to seek support for existing resources, and then the focus on success for the entire student community. That's been part of our focus and goals, and those will continue. And the stakeholders, the flag routing information, and the campus collaboration with student life and undergraduate education and institutional research tracking, those have been in place, but we can expand those. But this population in the middle is where I'm excited that we are looking to go. We are exploring this work and actively discussing really focusing on more students. As Sarah said, half of our class have some scholarship engagement. And so, you know, with 9,550 freshmen last year, 5,000 of them had scholarship connections. We want to extend this to the entire freshman class, and we also want to extend mentoring to transfer students. And I want to pause for just a quick, 20 seconds on transfer students to say, if you think maybe freshmen might have unique issues, I can look to this group here for some nod heading, perhaps, or head nodding, sorry, to say that if freshmen have challenges, certainly transfer students, they have a very tight window of time at our institution. They're coming from different places and maybe did things differently. They need to be caught up to speed very fast. They don't have a 4-year runway. They have to really get caught up to speed to adjust to our campus. So transfer students are our next area of focus as well. So we're excited about this.
Great, thank you. So as we wrap up our conversation today, I want to kind of bring it back to the top and give both David and Sarah the floor. What is one piece of information or one critical strategy that you want our attendees today to take away from today's conversation?
Well, I'll repeat one that I said earlier, and that is mentoring should just be one of those high impact practices, tools in your toolbox. But I probably just give a quick quote, and I think I've used this before, perhaps in one of these settings, but I love it. I think it's Muhammad Ali that said, "Volunteering is the rent we pay for living." And these volunteer mentors they're volunteering to be a mentor. And of course, as a mentee, they're volunteering too. But the give and get of this and what they get out of it is so critical. And I think it is part of giving back. They have received scholarships. We want them to be mentored. And then after they've been mentored, we want them to become a mentor. And we want this cycle of kind of attitude of gratitude to be in place among all of our students. And we want to build this culture of support. And it goes all the way back, as I said, threading it through to belonging.
And I would say a couple of things. One is that every institution is different. Every campus is different. Every academic program is different. And so really just thinking about what the goals are that you are trying to achieve where you are, and thinking about how mentoring could help advance those goals. We've talked about the ways that we intentionally and strategically utilized it at our school for our goals, but certainly it can be used in a lot of different ways. And the other thing I would say is, just like anything, you get out of it what you put into it, right? So Mentor Collective is a tool, but it still takes some investment of intentionality to have it be the most successful for you. So again, the good work from our colleagues in terms of matching with similar types to have more successful mentoring outcomes, those types of things. You know, it still will take that real intentionality to have the benefits that you most want.
Thanks, Sarah. I know that we have a few questions in the chat, so I'll have my colleague Alex help us direct to a few of the questions.
Hey, yes, Sarah and David. We had someone ask, how early do you all start your peer mentorship? Is it before students arrive on campus? And then the second question is around international students. And so are the students paired with domestic students? Are they taking ownership of identifying who they want to match with in terms of mentors? And then have you done any deeper dive into the data for understanding that significant increase specifically with the international student population?
I'll just quickly say that we offer this as students are coming in to their freshman year. Sarah can talk about the details, and our colleague Megan is on this call too, so we appreciate her being here as well. But and then regarding the international students, and really Eric can talk about the matching aspect even more strongly than I can, but students are matched with whom they would like, with the kinds of profiles and experiences that they would like to be matched with. So they go in and fill out the survey as a mentor and as a mentee, and then Mentor Collective helps us do that matching. And it may be based on the fact that they want an international student, or maybe they want a domestic student as their mentor. So Sarah, you may have more context to add, and Eric, you might want to add it as well.
Sure, I'll add one part on the question about digging in, or the greater progress with international and underrepresented students. So one of the things that Megan and I talked about when the invitation goes out to everybody, right? So an invitation to connect with this tool goes out to all Hoosier scholars. And initially, there was maybe less response from some student populations. And so we strategically sent follow-up invitations and additional pushes to populations that we know historically persist at lower rates. So for example, there's the one invitation that goes to everybody, but then we sent additional pushes and follow-up to underrepresented students, first-generation students, students that, again, we know at Indiana University, persistence rates fall below their peers. And so that really helped also boost that population in terms of their participation. And then therefore, because they're in the population, they can have the impact of the mentoring. And then Eric, did you want to talk at all about the matching?
Yeah, absolutely. So generally speaking, mentees are invited into participating in these initiatives based on when our partners want to have them involved. So it could be as early as sending invites out in May or June as orientation is ongoing, or it could be a couple weeks right before they arrive on campus. And so that's one of the design questions that we work in consult with our partners to really understand what they're looking to impact. And then as for the matching process, so there's a matching survey that has about a dozen different questions when it comes to things like demographic information and affinity-based questions. And if an international student so desires to be matched with a fellow international student, they can make that stated and clear on the matching survey. And we use a matching algorithm that then produces a best fit match based on the 80 distinct data points that are collected in that matching survey, so that the mentee's desire and a mentor are then best represented in that best fit match for them. And so this matching survey is configurable to match the institution and your student profile to ensure that those unique data points and those unique student populations are taken into consideration so they can create those best fit matches overall. There is a question about the training. The training for the mentors is a 1-hour online module that has knowledge checks built in along the way so that the mentors are able to comprehend the content, and then we're able to track if they're actually progressing through the information as well. And mentors do have to complete that training before they are matched with any mentees. If you do want to learn from some of the best practices that we've seen, and leveraging technology and building a scalable culture of mentorship. We do have a QR code available on the screen so that you can download a resource that really talks about the different aspects of building a successful mentoring initiative on your campus, the things that you need to consider and why they are important. So I'll leave that up there for one more minute so that for those who are pulling your phones out, you can get to that quickly and easily. And then finally, we at Mentor Collective are really focused on improving student belonging and retention. And that really starts with our partnerships across the collective, looking at how our operations have impacted the sense of belonging across all of our student participation, and then looking at the meta-analyses that have shown the overall impact on retention overall along the way as well. So thank you all for joining us today. The work that we do in consult with our partners is really impactful, both in the individual student level, and we really want to help additional institutions to support them with gaining the insights from either existing mentoring initiatives or helping you to scale up those initiatives as well. So we look forward to seeing you again at future webinars and events or out at conferences here in the near future. Thank you all for coming today. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.